Welcome to a live dev mentoring session. The topic today is app architecture. Well, we'll run an app architecture review. And our guest today, Renan. Welcome.
Welcome back, Helen.
Hello, thank you.
So, for how long have you been a developer?
It made 6 years now as an iOS developer.
Before that?
I was studying.
All right. So you started already as an iOS developer.
Yes.
All right. So how can we help you today?
Okay, so recently in my current company, I assumed the role of tech lead, and one of my extra responsibilities is to deal with the current architecture of the project and to improve it. So I did a simple project, very similar to the one I work with today, and I draw the current architecture of this project, and I also draw the architecture I want to achieve in a near future, and I have some questions regarding this new architecture and how to do some stuff.
Awesome. So this is the current architecture, right?
Yes.
So there's a main module that depends on the other. So every box here is a module, correct?
Yes, correct.
Like a framework, a package, like it's an independent
Yes.
piece of functionality. Okay.
So can
there's
I
a
give
main
an
module.
overview about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the UI module is the main one, which contains most of the views and functionalities of the app. For example, the home screen, the product details view, and things like that. The checkout contains two main functionalities, which is the cart view and also the steps for the checkout when a user wants to finish an order. The models contains all the models of the application, like client, product, order, and things like that. And it's used by the interfaces and also by the service, which is the module responsible for performing the HTTP requests, while the analytics is used to throw some events, like analytics events. And that's it, I think. And the main module that holds everyone together.
Okay, so this checkout module, it has UI for the checkout,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it only UI? Is like a checkout UI, or it has more components?
It has the cart view and all the views related to the checkout. So, for example, checkout has the step where the user needs to enter with their informations, the address for the freight, the payment information, and things like that. And it also makes some HTTP requests for all this
Okay, so
process.
there's some kind of service in there as well.
Yes.
Okay. And are you having issues with this design?
Yes, the problem is that we have lots of different modules, but kind of everyone communicates with everyone. So when I change one module, the others will be affected. So I would like to isolate some of them, thinking about the maintenance of the project and also to scale this in the future.
Okay. So for example, the models module, it has a lot of clients, right? A lot of the modules that
Yes.
use it. You can see the arrows pointing to it, which means changing this can break all the other modules that depend on it, right? Not just that, but changing it means that you need to recompile all the other ones. So build times can increase a
Yes.
lot. If you have a shared module that is stable, meaning you rarely change it or never change it, then it's fine, right? But if you have a models that you're always changing it, every time there's a change, you're going to change the mods. You need to keep recompiling all the other modules, and that can become quite expensive, right?
Yes.
So the idea is to separate them in a way that can be developed, tested in isolation without affecting other modules.
Yes. And about like the responsibilities, because the models I have today contain the responsibility of the mapping data from the API to the objects of my application. and also the view has access to all of this. And I imagine that the view shouldn't have access to this kind of logic because the view don't need it.
Okay. So the strategy here was to create feature modules. So every feature has a module that contains the UI, the services for that specific feature, and the models.
Mm-hmm. Ideally, I think the best for us here would be to have different modules for different features, but I am trying to modularize what we have today. So I kind of kept the same modules, but try to isolate more of them.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, you inherited this code base, right? And you
Yes,
are
yes.
changing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not part of the decisions in the beginning.
No, I was not.
Okay. And how many people are working in this project right now?
Today with me, 3 in the iOS project.
Anyone was in the beginning of the project?
No, I am the oldest, but even this I was not in the beginning.
Okay. So let's see where you want to get. Is this the same?
No, the second one was with the errors that I want to remove highlighted.
Okay. It's
Okay.
grayed out. Yeah.
So the gray ones, like these
Yes.
ones,
Mm-hmm.
you want to remove
Yes.
those dependencies, right? Those arrows show
Yes.
dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
So the UI depends on the checkout module. For example, it imports the checkout module to access some of its components, right?
Yes, correct.
And it also communicates directly with components of the analytics module. Okay, so you want to eliminate this dependencies.
Yes.
This is the
And
final.
the UI to the checkout too, I think.
Oh, this one as well. Okay.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is the goal for now, I think.
So when you say UI, is here like every feature has a user interface, right? The checkout has some views. So when you say UI, is this like a reusable components?
It's basically a bunch of views and all the functionalities are there.
Okay.
And they communicate with service to perform HTTP requests.
Okay. Because I think like having modules, feature modules, for example, checkout is like a feature, right? So it's like checkout feature. You could have also like a login register feature, which is like more authentication, right? Feature. There's another one that could be user profile feature. These can be independent, right? You have the checkout. If you separate them into modules, it's usually we call this the vertical
Yeah.
separation, right? Every feature is sliced vertically. And then inside of each of those, whoops, inside each of those modules, we may have here the UI for it, for the feature, some services,
Yeah.
everything that serves that feature,
Models.
models, view models, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And every module will contain their own types, right? Their own functionality components. So everything is cohesive. If you want to do something with the login
Yeah.
feature, you go to the login module, and there you have access to the UI, to the services, to the models. If you want to change something in the user profile, you go there to change the UI, the services, the models, and so on. Then you have cohesive models, like they are decoupled, so they are low coupling between features, but within each feature, everything is cohesive. Everything's together, right? That's one strategy that we usually call this vertical slicing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The other one, they're usually called vertical. The horizontal slicing is different. Let me get an example here. Whoops, where is it? So this is vertical slicing, right? Every feature and their components. Now, horizontal slicing would be if you put all the services, for example, together. You have like a service component, module, and all the services are in there. The login service is there, the user profile service is there, and the checkout service is there. So here will be like services. Then you have another layer which would have the UI, another layer where you have the models. But all the models are in the same module. All the UI is in the same module. All the services in the same module. They are decoupled. Like there's a module just for services, a module just for UI, and a module just for models. But all the features are together.
This is the case for the current state of the project, I think.
So there
It
was
seems
some kind of
it's a bit of both.
Yeah,
Yes.
because the UI here contains all the UI for the application, apart from checkout, right? So it looks like there was this separation where this horizontal separation, like all the UI is together in the same module, not separated by feature. Now, if we start moving to this vertical slicing, now we have feature modules. And inside these feature modules, we have the UI for that feature, the models for the feature, the services for that feature, right? That's another strategy. And we can even mix and then have like vertical and horizontal slicing, where you have like the features separated, but within the features, you also break down into modules for the UI services and models. That can also be done.
Okay.
So it all depends on which stage you are in the project, how like the structure of the company. You usually have feature modules when you have feature teams. And then you have a team of developers working in the checkout, another team of developers working in the user profile, another team of developers working in the authentication module. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on the team structure, goals of the project. Do you need to reuse some features in other applications? Does you decouple the feature from specific applications and so on?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the project had this horizontal slicing before, and your plan is to move to a more vertical slicing going forward.
Yes, actually, it will happen only with a checkout module because we wanted to create an app clip with a specific cart view and the checkout steps. So that's the reason
Okay.
for the checkout module.
So you want to keep the horizontal slicing,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and when needed, like oh, there's a feature that I need to use as an app clip, then you extract it into a standalone
Yes.
module. But within this module, you will have the UI services, models, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like this.
Hannah, I would ask you something right now.
Mm-hmm.
What's not right with this architecture you have right now for you? Like what's the part that you could actually get an improvement from? Because you have some separation of the modules, and I mean, yeah, of course, if you remove some of the dependencies, you might get faster builds, like maybe less conflicts when working on features, but there's not a huge benefit you'd get. So my question is, why do you need to change? Or also, I would be interested if maybe a monolithic approach is not better in your case, if you do reap the benefits of having these horizontal slices that you do right now, because they don't really work for everyone, right? If you have this model module, and you make any change to it, you basically recompile and redeploy all the entire project. So I'm not seeing like the benefit of modularization in this particular case unless you really separate them. So can you comment a bit on that? Like where would you want to improve actually?
Yes, I can. I think that the first thing regarding this is that this is a simpler version of the real project. So the real project contains more modules and they are more connected. Like I did kind of a study where I listed all the modules and all the number of clients and dependencies of each module, and the numbers are really high. So what I believe is happening in the project is that we have modules that actually are not modules because everyone connects with everyone. So I would like to reduce the number of dependencies and everything else, like the build time and when I change something, other like all the entire project breaks actually. So I would like to modularize more. And today we do not have enough developers to work in separate features, but this is a future case for us because of the product and how it works and what we think for it to.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked you this, and this is the last comment I have here. Investing in decoupling these modules is like a strong investment. It can be done overnight, and
Yes.
you have to, like, that cost must be uh, okay to sustain for your team. You know, if you're willing to dedicate that extra development time to just decouple these modules, you have to, like, maybe, I don't know, um, be sure that that's the direction you want to go with. So
I think another interesting thing I can say about this too is the checkout module today is not completely isolated, so I can't create an app clip with it because it depends on lots of other things, and the app clip has a limitation of the size of it. So I need to decouple it to be able to launch an app clip, for example.
Yeah, I think it's 10 megabytes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The limit for app clips. Yeah. Okay. So you are happy with the horizontal slicing and you want to keep it like this
Yes.
and only extract some features when needed. Okay. And what are the benefits you think you will get from doing so?
I think it's the decouple, the build-in time reducing, and reducing the number of errors that occur because I updated some module.
Let's think about the build times then. For example, when you are developing your app, let's say there's you need to change something in the checkout.
Mhm.
What is the process? Do you do it with your main target here, running the
Yes,
test, or you switch to a specific module, you make changes in that specific module, only running the tests there?
I use the main one.
Yeah, so I don't think you will gain many benefits in separating two modules because the main one depends on all the modules, which means you're always rebuilding the whole tree that depends on the module that changed. For example, the main module depends on the UI and in the models, right? So if you're building from this link here, from this leaf of the tree, and you make a change in the model, you're going to have to rebuild the models, the checkout, the UI, the service, everyone that depends on the models.
Mhm.
But if your development process is, oh, I need to make a change in the models and I will switch to the models scheme, then you can work in this module in isolation and you make a change, you only compile this. And you only need to recompile everything when you actually want to run the app,
Mhm.
right? So the benefit comes when you are building things in isolation and only building them. But when you build the app, every time you build the app, you need to build all the modules.
Mhm. I see.
So when you're thinking about developing things with separate modules to improve build times, one of the big improvements will be developing things without having to build the main module.
Mhm. The reason why I use the main module today is because I have this chain of dependencies. So, for example, if I will make some change in the models, I have in my mind that I wouldn't use the models scheme because I can make these isolated changes here in the models, But once I try to build the entire app, everything will start to break. So I prefer to work in the main module to see if the other dependencies are breaking, the other modules that depend on this module.
Okay, so because of the dependencies, you want to make sure all the time that changing something here didn't break other modules, right?
Yes.
And that's why. Okay.
The checkout, for example, there are views in the checkout that are reused in the UI module. So I can't make isolated changes in these views because the UI module depends on it.
Yeah. If you make a change here, maybe you build the checkout fine, but then you
Yes.
break the the
Mhm.
UI. Okay, I see. Yeah, that's when you have the benefit of modularity, is that you know that making changes here is fine, because if you break something, you break the composition root, right? You break the main app, and that's fine because you just go there and fix it because you made a change and it needs to fix the main module. But then I would start thinking more about maybe feature modules.
Okay, I'll have that in mind, and I will take this to my team too.
Another thing which I would add here, so if you go with the horizontal slicing, usually when you develop a new feature, you hit all the slices. So there's no modular, like there's no limited scope where you have to keep your changes. You'll always, like if you need to develop a new feature, you're always gonna maybe change the models, add something to the UI, change the services. So again, the modularity does not work in your advantage. Whereas, as Caio said, with the vertical slicing, you might get away with just working inside one module. If you work on, I don't know, the user profile or the checkout, that's the only module you're gonna change, and the only other module that depends on it would be main, and all the other modules will be left alone, like no conflicts, no. If you have other people in your team working on a different feature, then you don't collide. That's my, at least the downside I see with horizontal slicing is usually you get conflicts because these like abstractions, the each module on grouped by their, I don't know, overall type usually ends up to like leads to conflicts and problems, because usually you hit all of them with the same, I don't know, piece of work, task, or PR. And so that's why I would also recommend you look at feature modules instead.
Because it's very rare that you will add a feature that only touches the UI module. It will be very rare that you make a change in a feature without touching only the models or only the UI. Usually they go like they cross this vertically, right? The integration here, which means we don't have cohesion, right? If every time we need to change a feature, you need to change two modules, maybe they shouldn't be two modules. They should be one, right? And then we say, but if everything is in one module, they don't have a monolith, and they need to rebuild everything, and they have a lot of conflicts. Yes, so then you think about feature modules, and then you isolate specific features. They are cohesive within their scope, but they are decoupled from other features, from other scopes.
Okay, I understand all these questions and the bad side of horizontal and the good sides of vertical, but my objective here is, I think first is to improve what exists today, because it's currently horizontally sliced, and I created this checkout, which is vertical slicing, and I think I just first want to improve a bit what I have today, so we'll be able to work more in separated modules. And with time, we go improving and slicing it to be feature modules. Because the project is really huge, and as you said, it's really hard to make these great changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so for the checkout, as you are already extracting it, start thinking about creating a cohesive module only with checkout and eliminate dependencies from it. And the rest you can keep horizontal, like for now. And with time, as the need arises, you start moving it to a modular separation like this. You'll get more benefits, I believe, in the long run. Okay. I think we are on the same page now. Do you have a specific implementation questions, like challenges you want to go through?
Yes, I have some questions. So the first one is about the tab bar. So the tab bar is in the UI module now, and one of the views that the tab bar use is in the checkout module. And in this case, I think that the tab bar should be moved to the main module. So the main module would have access to the checkout module and would be able to create an instance of the cart view, which is in the checkout module, and then embed it in the tab bar. And could you please do that with me? Help me with it.
Yeah. Okay, so UI module is a separate project, a separate target. And inside of it, we have this navigator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and as you can see, we need to import the checkout module here, right? So there is a dependency here,
Mm-hmm.
UI to checkout. And you want to eliminate this dependency, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So just by removing it, we will see the build errors. Well, let me switch to UI. There you go. The cart view. The cart view is?
It is in the checkout module.
Yeah, but it's a view controller. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any reason why you call it cart view and not cart view controller?
No.
Shorter, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, if you don't want it to depend on this, what is the way? Can inject it, right? That's one way. In the initializer here, you could inject the view controllers. Or you could even say, you know what, I'm going to inject a tab bar. So you create a tab bar in the composition root. You're not moving the tab bar to the composition root. The instantiation of the tab bar, because the actual tab bar is not a class that you own. It's in UIKit module, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's already in another module, in UIKit. So you don't move the class tab bar, like the actual component, but the instantiation of the component can be done somewhere else. So, and here you just, so this can be done in the composition root, for example. And the composition root has access to all modules, right? So that's not a problem. And you pass through dependency injection. The problem is that this is a singleton. And this is one of the reasons we don't like singletons, because when you need to pass dependencies to this singleton, then it starts becoming hard. How can you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you would have to make it a var, maybe, to instantiate it from the composition root.
An optional property of type UI tab bar controller is a bad idea.
Like this,
Yes.
and set from the composition root.
Yes.
It's a bad idea because someone else in some part of the code could set it back to nil or reset it. And this is not something maybe you want to reset, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Maybe it could be a step to get to where you want to go, because you have a huge code base and it references this singleton instance everywhere. Thus, this is what you need to do right now to get one step closer to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But don't stop there, right? You need a plan, and to get there you need steps, and one of those steps will be dirty. Like you're gonna get in the mud, but that's fine. One step at a time, right? As long as you have a good direction you're going to, and say, okay, I'm going to do this right now, and later I will improve it. Another way is to make this a var. Like this is like, oh my god, this is like mutable shared state now. Yeah, but because I'm making a conscious decision here, I spoke with my team, and everyone understands why this is happening here, right? Why we are doing this, and eventually we'll get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because there are better patterns, right? Dependency injection. would be better. But if you cannot do it because it's large code base and it's too much effort right now, then we look at other solutions for now.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe instead of setting this as an optional, otherwise you need to deal with optionals everywhere in your code base. Maybe you could have a default like empty tab bar, or you make this a settable.
Yeah. And just to make sure nobody breaks it, you can override the setter and maybe use a static counter. So you just allow one set per app instance, and if somebody sets it again, you can fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like UI application,
yeah.
right? You
Yeah,
can create
exactly.
UI applications, but only once. If you create more than one, it crashes. So there are ways you can deal with that. And they are all trade-offs because of the current design, right?
Yes.
Can be done. By moving the instantiation to the composition root, then you eliminate the dependency on the checkout module.
Okay.
And then this arrow is gone. Okay. Is this clear?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Cool. Next question. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so after moving the tab bar to the main module, actually as you said, the best solution is not this. But after removing the dependency to the checkout module, how to implement a navigation from a view controller that is in the UI module to the view that is in the checkout module. For example, if I want to move from the home screen to the cart screen, both are in the tab bar. And if you could show me how to do that, please.
Okay, let's say we have a home screen, and when I press buy, I want to go to the cart view, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a home view controller somewhere? Home view.
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. We have the home view. And at some point, there will be a did select or did tap buy button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we have it somewhere? Did
I believe
press
this
add.
is it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's say here. What is add product to cart? Oh, this is the analytics. Okay. So there's this products cell delegate here. Let's say when I press buy, I want to go to the cart. Now, one way to do it is to do it directly here, right? Navigation controller dot push, blah, blah, blah. But then you need to create the next view controller. And that's what you want to avoid. You would have to create a cart view here. To create a cart view, we need to import the checkout module. It creates a source code dependency. And you don't want that. So what do you do instead? Don't perform the navigation. One way you can do it is like this. You inject that logic with a polymorphic interface. Could be a closure, could be a protocol. For example, did select product. It's a closure. You pass a product, returns void. We can make it optional. It could be a delegate protocol. It could be a closure.
Yeah. Some
There's
call.
something as a product.
I think it's car, yeah.
Yeah. But that needs to import the checkout. Maybe.
Models.
Oh, models, okay.
So when you select the product, where was it? Here. Oh, it's a search product. Did select product. But what you're doing here, the view controller is just notifying someone else that an event happened. The user selected this product. What's going to happen? Doesn't matter. Maybe I'm going to show the cart view. Maybe I will fire a network request. Maybe I will log that into analytics. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are delegating the responsibility to someone else. Like someone selected the product. That's all my responsibility is to notify someone that this happened. So this is a search product, just so it compiles. And that's it. Now, since we create the home view in the composition root, remember we talked about it, you will instantiation lives in the main module. When you create the home view, you will compose it with a component that can present the cart view when this closure is called. But from the point of view of the home view class, it doesn't know what happens when this closure is called. It just sends a message. That's object orientation, passing messages to objects, right? We have these polymorphic interfaces, which allows polymorphism, like different behaviors. One of the behaviors is to present a cart view. But the view controller doesn't need to know what happens. You just need to send a message and trust that someone will do something with it.
I see. Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, it does.
So you just send a message. Just like table views work, right? When it selects a cell, a table view can be used in a table view, a collection view can be used in any application, because it doesn't care what happens when a cell is selected. It just notifies whoever is listening that a cell was selected, and then it's up to your application to do something about it. It's the same concept. They do it with a protocol. We can do it with a protocol as well. We could have a protocol, and there's a method there, did select product. Or it could be a closure, whatever makes sense in the case. There are multiple actions that can happen. Maybe you use a protocol and then you compose all of them in one type. Otherwise, just one closure.
Okay, nice. So the next question is a bit similar. So how to allow the communication of events that happens in the home screen. For example, when I add a product to the cart, something happens in the home screen, but the home screen continues in the screen of the user of the device, but I need to notify the cart. So when the user enters in the cart view, it will be updated with a new product added.
Yeah.
And how to do that with isolated modules. And I think an option maybe is notification center, but I don't know if there is a better solution to this.
Any way you can use to propagate events, right? Just like we showed here. A closure could be one way, right? Behind the scenes, the implementation could be to add to the cart instead of showing the cart view, right? So all the view controller needs to do is to propagate those events through some kind of abstract interface, like some kind of observation pattern, like a closure call, a delegate call, target action. Could you use notification center? Could, but maybe there are better patterns, right? Because notification center is maybe it's too open for this case. It's like this global, if you're using like the default notification center instance, it's like this global broadcasting mechanism that anyone in the app can listen to. So when you send a message to this global broadcasting system, it can fire all kinds of side effects, which start getting complex, like to understand what happens in your application when you broadcast a message. Like it can lead to issues.
Hard to debug issues.
So the main module would have all the instances and would kind of do this communication.
Yeah. Or some component in the main module would coordinate that. Yes.
Okay.
For example, let's say we have a cart class, and there is a method like search product. And it does some work here, okay? In the composition root, you will create a home view, make home view. Create the home view. When there is a selection, it's just send a message to the cart. So this is in the UI module. This is the composition root, main module. And this is in the, let's say, checkout. Now, the checkout doesn't know about the UI. The UI doesn't know about the checkout. The main module composes both of them, instantiates both of them, and composes them. When there is a message coming from the UI, it is sent to the cart, but this is decided in the main module. Make sense? This way they are communicating. They communicate between themselves, but they don't know about each other.
Okay, the last
What
thing.
I would.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Henan, just maybe a comment here. So I would underline the solution that Caio presented is a very explicit, like a very clear one. There's no, like, the did select product is an explicit function where you would expect this function to be called when the product is selected. There's no like multiple receivers of this call. There's no like indirect calls being made. The problem with notification center, if I can say it's a problem, is it starts from this communication pattern of one to many. So you have one broadcaster, multiple recipients. You have no idea who's going to react to these notifications. And many problems can arise because like you write the correct communication today, but tomorrow a colleague comes and calls for one of the methods like the did select product from, I don't know, he needs it somewhere else, and you end up with 2 calls or no calls to the notification. And it's really hard to test. Like you have to have these intermodule tests that check that the notifications are fired correctly on the right thread. Like it's an indirect method to pass messages between modules, and it's hard, like easy to break, right? So if you use these more direct patterns like a closure, a delegate, like more explicit ones, they're easier to test and they're harder to, I don't know, to break. So I'd recommend you choose the variants that are explicit, and there's maybe a one-to-one communication in this case. You won't, I don't know, get multiple calls to did select product unless you screw it up in that module. So I think it's a lot safer approach than notification center. Notification center usually, I don't know, can come in handy when you have to broadcast to multiple recipients and you don't really care how this notification works, but it's it has downsides. And especially if you want to debug that or try to, I don't know, look at the crash report, I'm just mentioning this, it's really hard because the flow of control is not linear. So you just jump from one place to another place of the app with a notification. It's kind
It's almost
of
like a go-to.
Yeah, like, exactly. And recent programming guidelines say you should not use go-to, right? It's somehow forbidden. So that's why I wouldn't recommend it unless there's no other option.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Bogdan.
We can try to make this more explicit. Let's say we're using here notification center instead. But there's another problem with notification center. Notification center. Let's say we're using this default one, and then we add observer, block. Okay. And you need a notification name, right? Let's say we use a name here. Product selected. Any object, whatever, main. Here we get a notification. Inside the notification, we get the product inside the user dictionary. Okay. Now, we need to, at some point, broadcast this, right? And let's say we do it in the view controller. Where is the view controller? Here. Instead of calling the closure, we would do something like post product selected, like that. Now we can say that, oh, there's no coupling between these modules because I'm not importing the other module, right? So there's no source code dependency. There is no source code dependency. I can build the UI module independently from the checkout module. However, there's an implicit dependency, the name of the notification. Makes sense? The name of the notification.
Yes.
If I change this here, the code breaks, which means they are not independent. I cannot change this without breaking the other module. So although it seems like there's no source code dependency, there is implicit, which is one of the worst ones, because you make a change here, the other project still compiles fine. If someone there's a refactoring and someone mistyped it, like there's a typo here. The test, maybe you update the test, the test passed, like or it compiles, but it doesn't work. You get these bugs in QA, right? When someone's like, hey, it's not showing the cart or it's not adding to the cart. And that's one of the problems as well with this indirect kind of communication. This is more direct. And in the composition, let's look at the composition if I use notification center. It's this make home view. It's like this. I'm create a home view, and nothing here tells me that it has a relationship with the cart. Now, here it's very explicit that there is a relationship with the cart, and that's how they communicate, right? So that's another problem I have with Notification Center. I think it's a great tool, but not for this.
Okay.
Because it creates implicit dependencies. It solves the source code dependency, but introduces others. It also introduces problems, as Bogdan said, with threading. Now we need to care about like threading, because you're throwing this notification globally and you never know who's gonna do what with it and when. There might be conflicting functionalities, like maybe two parts of the app are listening to the same notification and they try to present a modal at the same time. Now UIKit's not gonna like that. It can crash, or you cannot guarantee which model will be shown. And you start having all these weird glitches in your app.
Also temporal coupling, right? If the two operations need to be in an order and you post the notification, you have no idea who's going to receive it first. So all these problems.
Yeah, this only works if there is a cart instance created before the did select is called. Otherwise, there's no cart to listen to it, right?
Yes, totally.
So there's this weird stuff that it's not clear in the code. It's not easy to check.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Notification Center in this case.
Okay.
It needs to be a fire and forget thing. Like I'm just posting something and I don't care. In this case, we cared. So let's try to make it more explicit. I need to have an instance and they need to be connected. And then there is no implicit dependency on the notification name, on what kind of objects we are passing, and so on.
I don't know if I can make an analogy. It's like trying to send a message through a courier directly to the receiver or to the postal office. And to the postal office, anything can happen. Like it can be, I don't know, misplaced, it can get back to you after a while, cannot
Mhm.
find the delivery address, something like that. So always choose the direct way if possible. Right.
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yes, totally. Thank you very much. The last point is just an impression I have. It's not a question. Is that today I don't use the main module very much. It is just there to connect stuff, but there isn't too much code in there. So I have like this fear of putting too much stuff in the main module. But I think it's common, right? Just would like you to say considerations about the main modules, I think.
It depends what you mean by too much. Too much of what? Because the cost of not having a main module and doing the composition there is coupling in the other ones, right? So like I'm happy that I don't my main module is small, but the consequence of that is that I have coupling in all my other modules, right? So it's a
Mhm.
trade-off. Like we need to find to achieve the level of low coupling that you want in your application and balancing what should be in which module. Like this is a constant exercise that would you'll never end. Like every day you'll be asking yourself, where should I put this component? Which module should it be? How should these modules communicate? And there's no precise answer. This is how it should be. It's like it depends. It depends on your application, depends on your team structure, depends on your goals, depends on a lot of things. But it's a constant exercise you'll be asking yourself. And if you think like, oh, okay, I'm moving a lot of stuff to the main module, yeah, that can be a problem as well. At some point, I see a lot of people that start doing the composition route and start moving some adapters around. They start actually moving also business logic into the main module. So there are patterns that you need to find. But when you hit a problem, so when you're creating your composition route, you will hit problems and maybe you don't have answers. And then if you have a specific problem, we can help you with that.
Okay.
But I don't think you should be afraid of having a large composition root, because if it's getting large, there are patterns to not make it large. There are solutions to the problem.
Mhm. Some patterns we are starting to use that you mentioned, like the adapter. Also, we've been implementing some routers to do the communication between screens, and the builder. So we are creating specific objects to create the views, for example. And we think in some moment moving these objects to the main module.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's not a problem.
No,
No.
you move it there, like, okay, because this adapter depends on two modules, I'll move it to the composition root, for example, to keep these two modules decoupled and still bridge the communication between them. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Like there are some certain fundamental rules that you should probably follow. Like for example, do not instantiate components inside the modules. Like let the instantiation happen in the composition root in the main module. So if you follow that, then the rest, like they're I don't know, have like
Yeah,
a less
because
weight.
let's say composition root is for instantiating objects and composing them. So this is composition. I don't consider this logic. But at some point you do something like this. This is gonna happen. Like when you are in a rush and like, oh, I should only send this if the product is not uh, out of stock. And then you're gonna add this to the composition root. Now you start having problems. Because
Mhm.
now you start adding logic to the composition root. Right? Maybe this should be in the cart implementation. When adding a product to the cart's gonna reject that. But you see that like a lot of code bases that start creating the composition root start somehow at some point adding logic to it, because it seems like that's the only logical place I can think of it right now. But when this happens, like go back to basics. No, the composition root should only instantiate and compose those objects.
Okay.
It should not have logic. So they should have these like smoke signs that you smell like you look at it like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. So, but I don't have an answer right now. So let's look for the answer. It's a constant exercise that will happen.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So every time it happens, like, I'm not sure if this is correct. Like, let's look for another alternative. Ask a question on Slack,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. Also, when you say you're maybe afraid to add too much stuff to the main module, I think another smoke sign would be avoid building features or components in the main module. So, like the guy said, you should use the composition root and the main module to instantiate and connect them, and maybe write adapters, decorators, that kind of stuff. But like a feature or a reusable component should not be in the main module. Like if you are modularizing, it should probably have a module that is dedicated for that. So that also assures that your main module does not grow, because it can be a temptation at some point. All these dependencies, let me write it in the main module and be done with it. Right? So also something to look out for.
Okay.
So as a team lead, you're gonna have to help your team have discipline.
Yes.
Sometimes you will also slack. Is like, oh, we are in a rush, we have a deadline, let's always try to go back and not slack. Always be disciplined with what you do. Be a role model. That's the best way you can teach your team, is to be a role model. Okay, we under stress, and the guy's just cold. He's still like following the principles. Like, that's a good example for the team.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks. It helped a lot, these guidelines about the main module. So I think the technical questions are these, and I have more questions about mentoring. Could I start to do that? To
Yeah,
ask?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so the first one is about how to help the developers to improve the soft skills, because I think we are like developers and more technical. So to help to develop the technical side is easier for me, at least. And I already did a mentoring session with them, and I focused mainly in the communication aspect. But I don't know if I should focus in more important aspects of soft skills too.
I think first of all is being a role model, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you just tell them like, hey, your communication is to improve, but your communication is terrible, it's like, what kind of example you're giving to them, right? So
Totally.
always being a role model. If you want them to write tests, you need to write tests, for example, right? If you want them to write emails with or send like messages with enough detail, always, every time you send a message, you provide that template, that what do you expect from them, right? What you expect from them is how you behave on your day-to-day as well.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, is like, as a role model. And maybe there are things that we do that other people may not perceive as like a technique or a skill, right? Communication as a skill, you just think like, oh, that's how you are and that's how I am. So maybe making it more transparent, that, hey, have you seen what I did here? That's not by chance. Like, I'm using a technique here in this communication. I'm you know you know what I mean.
Yes.
That's not an accident. That's not just my personality. Like, you
It's to
make it
show that they
more.
can achieve it too.
Yes.
What kind of soft skills are you talking about, Henan?
As I told you, I focused mainly in the communication, like communication between developers and between different teams, like the mobile with the backend and the backend with the client and things like that.
What kind of communication specifically?
Like written, like verbal, like
I think it's more. I think verbal and written, like when we have tasks and we have cards, like in the Trello, for example, or in some tool. So we need to communicate there what we are doing, and
yeah.
also in the meetings we have.
And can you give an example of a recurrent communication problem you have and you wish to improve?
Okay, some stuff the developers bring for me is like the fear to speak in a meeting because they think like, I don't know this. I would be saying a very easy thing here and things like that, like the fear to talk in a meeting because they think they don't know enough, things like that.
Right. And they're afraid of being judged.
Yes, and also the organization in the cards of our tasks. It's an issue for us, I think.
I don't know, having lunch together, like becoming more like building more relationship. I think more comfortable, right? It's hard to go to someone's like, be comfortable, be comfortable, be comfortable. It
Totally.
doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's something that will happen naturally, right? So this is about being comfortable showing vulnerability, right? And
Mhm.
are you showing vulnerability in front of them as well, right? It's if you're always the guy that does things perfectly, they will be afraid of showing imperfection in front of you, right?
Okay, I see. Makes sense.
Also, I think it's your maybe opportunity to find smaller projects where they can take ownership. If you, of course, if that's natural to maybe in a multi-team meeting they feel afraid because they don't understand all the implications, but you can find like maybe small projects where they can know more of the details and be more confident, like gain that confidence with time. I always thought that's a responsibility of the leader to find these, I don't know, training wheel kind of projects where they can succeed. And I also recommend, if you haven't checked out the book, uh, I, I I never know exactly the name of the book. I think it's Lead Essentials or
The lead
Lead
developer.
Lead Developer Essentials.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very good
Essentials.
book, and it will show you like most of the skills you want to build in your team, like soft skills, technical skills, maybe metrics to pay attention to. So for you as a leader, that it's definitely, I think it's one of the best summary contents on what a leader should be in our technical area.
There's a specific chapter about team communication there
Okay.
as well. And we address these problems when people are not speaking up, when people are afraid, and
Mm-hmm.
check it
Okay.
out.
I started to read it, and it helped me a lot actually, but I didn't finish. It's really a very good book.
I'll finish it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, like try to be like create a culture of being very explicit. Like perhaps people are afraid because they do not have enough information, and it's a habit of not sharing the information or like not asking the right questions. So like in my personal opinion, like the more information you have, the more comfortable you are in a situation. So and this is something like if you don't practice that, it will never happen. Like gonna say you're gonna use words like it or this, in a sentence to communicate something, but it can entail so much more. Which in your head, of course, it what you're talking about, but the other person doesn't, right? So uh, it says like in a requirement, this needs to do that, but you have
Yeah,
no
I
idea.
remember joining meetings like as a new developer in a team, and they're talking about, oh yeah, we need to do the IB thing by tomorrow. Like, what is IB?
Yeah,
But like as a new person, the team would be like, oh, it's stupid if I ask
I'm not gonna
because
ask that. Like,
everyone knows, everyone's like
yes,
agreeing with it, and maybe like 60% of the people in the meeting is also thinking the same. I don't know what IB is, and everyone's like, yeah, we need to do the IB thing. It's like no
Mm-hmm.
one knows what that is.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So trying to be as explicit as possible, um, which again is counterintuitive because you need to, for example, type more, you know, and like if you're not used to that, you're not gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're more inclined to type less, but that's something that you need to practice. And as a leader, of course, like this is up to you to show them why and make a habit out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good advice. Thank you, guys.
Another thing that works is having a time specifically for addressing these things, because like during a meeting, like people are thinking on a lot of other things. We have deadlines, we have responsibilities, we have to save face as well when something goes wrong. But then if you have like, that's why in Scrum, in other methodologies, there is a meeting at the end of the sprint where you just sit down and talk about problems. It's a time to bring up problems, a time to bring, these issues. That's the only reason why we are inside this room right now. So people are much more comfortable than in a meeting where you're talking about a bug that happened or a feature we need to implement. Start asking questions that are unrelated to it. People will feel less comfortable. But if you are in a time like, hey, this is the time for talking about things you feel vulnerable about, like that's the only reason we are inside this room. So people might feel more inclined to participate.
Okay,
And this
totally.
will also help you build a relationship, and people start becoming more comfortable with each other, right? Nurturing a good culture, like good relationships in the team.
Also, just to add here, I think it's important to explain what you're doing to the team. Like, hey, this is why for instance, you mentioned multiple communication types. Like you can say, okay, I chose to write this down instead of talk verbally to the team because of this reason. Or the other way around, like I'm not going to write an email because it would be too long, so then I prefer to, I don't know, sit down with the team and just write a summary at the end or something like that. And if you explain it, they will understand why you made a decision and can apply it later. So I think it adds to what Mike said, like being explicit about what you do.
Okay, totally. So I have two other questions. I think I can do they together.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you think is the best strategy to mentor senior developers? And the other is, was it common for you to mentor professionals of other technologies like backend or Android? And do you have any different or specific strategies regarding this?
The way I see development, software development is software development. I don't differentiate like iOS developers from backend developers. For me, they are software developers, and the fundamentals are always the same. Unless I'm teaching about a specific like iOS framework or talking about vision, then it's more specific to that platform. But in general, like software development is software development, and I work in teams that it's like most of my career, it's like I'm gonna help in the backend. The backend comes and help in the iOS app, and then we help with Android app. It's always like not us against them; it's us. And I like to be in teams that praise this. It's us, and we only get there if everyone gets there. The backend, the iOS, the Android app, and then we work together and we help each other and we share. I don't like silos, so I recommend. I really like
Mhm.
this culture of it's us. No one is done until everyone is done.
Okay, I see.
Yes. Whatever is needed.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Now, mentoring senior developers. I'm not sure. What do you mean by that? You
For
having conflicts
example,
because
no, it's like I don't know how I could help these developers to improve, mainly technically speaking. For example, I am one of the oldest developer in the company, but there are two others that have the same time in the company with me. So they know as much as I know about the product and about the code and things like that.
I think the important thing is to realize that like mentoring is a two-way road. We're both helping each other. You're both learning, right? So if you go with an attitude of I'm here to teach you, like this guy's like, no, I have nothing to learn from you. Like they might feel like attacked. Oh, so you're saying you learn no more than me. But if you go more into an attitude of like, hey, let's exchange knowledge. I know some things that you may not know. You know a lot of things that I may not know, and let's help each other.
Hmm.
That's what a good mentoring is. Like a good mentorship relationship you're both learning, you're both getting benefits from it. It's not a
Okay.
one-way road. I'm teaching you, I'm giving you, and you're not giving anything back. No, it's an
Improvement.
exchange.
Yes.
They have to be open to it. Right?
Yes.
And if someone is not don't want to be mentored, don't want to be part of this relationship, don't want to be part of this exchange, you cannot force them to, right? It's like
Yes, totally.
like that's part of empathy that we talk about in the book. Empathy is simply understanding the other side. Doesn't mean you agree with them, doesn't mean you sympathize with them. It just means that, oh, this person doesn't want to be in this mentorship relationship, so leave them alone.
But it can
Okay.
also, I don't know, drive you to think, okay, what's in it for them? Like, what's their incentive to agree to, I don't know, sit down and pair program with me or something? And if you find that answer, you can go talk to them. Like, hey, I think we're both seniors. Maybe we can learn something from each other. Let's sit down and work together for, I don't know. And you can start by asking them to share and contribute to what you're doing. So you're actually getting feedback from them at first, just to relax the relationship at first.
Okay.
Instead of approaching them first as, hey, let me teach you this, why don't you go and say, hey, can you teach me this? I saw that you did this thing here in this pull request. Can you explain to me this? Because I thought it was really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, there are multiple psychological tricks like that. Whenever you ask somebody to do something for you, they immediately open up. So you put them on a higher position. Like I said, if you do it the other way around and you say, okay, I don't know, I think you're doing a bad job with this, and I want to tell you how to do it. That's like a dead end. There's no way to make that work. Like they're senior, and senior engineers are usually have their egos, and even if they know they're wrong, they still won't admit it. So this is where a soft skill comes in handy, like this. And
Okay.
many people would just, I don't know, be open to like a mutual benefit relationship like that. So it's up to you how to address this.
Okay. Totally. Thank you for the advices. It will help me a lot, I think.
Awesome. Now put it in practice.
Yes, totally. I will.
Awesome.
And I'll
Fantastic.
finish the book. The book's helping me a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely.
1 hour a day, and you finish it very quickly.
Okay.
And then you can revisit. Like, I really like the advice when I joined the academy, like redoing the material every once in a while. You always find new things which you never saw when you read it the first time. So I think that's super helpful, especially when you're doing this job day to day. You might, I don't know, after a few months, you put your, like right now, you're maybe focused on the communication of the team. Maybe in a few months, you have something else you want to improve on. And then when you have an idea, if you go through the book again, might be a good
Totally.
idea. I don't know.
Yes, it is totally. Okay, these were all my questions. So thank you very much, Caio, Mike, and Bogdan. It helped me
Thank
a
you
lot.
for joining us.
Absolutely.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
All right. See you next time then.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.